In the last episode of Cassette Culture, we talked about artists in the network branching out into radio shows and international collaboration. In a package of archive cassettes and flyers sent to us from Steve Gears in the UK, we found a flyer that named all of the members of late 80s improvising group the Omega Ensemble. This provided a vital lead for our Discogs Detective, Tom Gibbs, to move his search for the band 2 steps further. In this episode, we start to investigate fanzines, the underground publications that shared news, reviews, and calls for contributions to cassette projects and compilation releases. This is Cassette Culture. From the mid-80s through to the 90s, the Dutch Vital fanzine provided a bridge between artists in the USA and Europe. I'm Martin Franklin, and I advertise for submissions to my Sound Image Tapes projects in the fanzine. So me and Hudson tracked down Frans de Waard, creator of Vital and the Korm Plastics label. As well as producing the fanzine, you'll hear Frans talk about his work at Staalplaat, which was the legendary record store and label for experimental music based in Amsterdam.
The first time I heard about cassettes was, I was very briefly interested in punk music, and I read some punk fanzines when I was 15, 16, Dutch ones. And one of these mentioned a label called Vinger in the Dijk. And they had, I think, it's an edition of 10 copies or something. And when I read that, I immediately thought, oh yeah, wow, this is a thing. You can record some music and make 10 copies. Fairly quickly after that, heard about Robin Gristle. And there was a new, bigger Dutch magazine coming out called Vinyl. They wrote about cassettes. From Brussels with Love was released, except from Belgium. I think it was one of the first. So my musical interest shifted really fairly quickly on to more experimental stuff. And at first I thought, oh, I can do this too. I just kept on collecting cassettes and collecting information about them.
At this point, how were you learning about the cassettes? How did you get the information?
Mainly from this magazine called Vinyl. I think I'm pretty sure they also wrote about fanzines. I would, buy those, or sometimes you would find one in a record store if you're not in Nijmegen, in Den Haag or Amsterdam. I would go to Staalplaat, talk to those people. Early on, it wasn't international for me. It was all Dutch. That's so. Oh, and I phoned people because this magazine also listed a lot of phone numbers, and much to the annoyance of my parents, I kept phoning these people. I had a huge phone bill. Yeah. I did this catalog, the Dutch cassette catalog, and then there was a German guy called Graaf Houven. He got a copy from me, and he asked me to do a compilation cassette with Dutch industrial music, and I realized I liked this music, and this became the first cassette that I did, and I wanted to actively promote all of this Dutch industrial music via a fanzine called Nul Nul in Dutch, which is 00, meaning there's zero of this kind of stuff available, and I'm doing it now. And I did 4 issues, 2 of them xeroxed, 2 of them got printed, and I never made any money back. And then I thought, I have to do this differently, and that became Vital in the end.
That first zine you did, when you say you did make any money from it, was that trying to sell cassettes or was it selling the zine? What was the aim there?
The zine was to promote the information. I printed 100 copies of every issue, I think. A fanzine, if you print 100 copies, you want to make your money back. A cassette release, you just copy one by one. I had a bunch of blank cassettes and would copy one if somebody ordered one. So that's a whole different thing. There was no money involved in that sort of thing. But I liked doing fanzines. I liked to send out information.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I have to do something else, and that became Vital.
Each edition of Vital had the banner "No Copyright Publication, Reprint Now" on the cover. This was the concept and instruction that let the fanzine grow a distributed network where readers could reprint the fanzine and share copies with their own contacts.
And the idea of Vital was you have 2 sheets of paper with densely print information, and you say to people, okay, here's an issue, you can only get one. You go to the Xerox place yourself and make copies and send those out to your friends, actively encouraging them also to do it. And after a while, I did a small survey, and I'm pretty sure of the first few issues, there must have been 8,000 or 10,000 copies.
That's amazing.
And that was inspired by the whole cassette thing, because labels did the same thing, where he would say, give me one master cassette and 20 covers, and I will run copies of the cassette myself with the original cover that you supply. Mm-hmm. The whole Vital thing was more or less the same idea. Yeah.
How did you establish the distribution of Vital and that network of people who would reprint it?
I would just send out copies.
Yeah.
Oh, I had subscriptions. That's fairly early on. You could already subscribe. A lot of people did, and I would think between 50 and 150 subscribers. Yeah, but also next to doing Vital, I did my own cassette label, so I was doing a lot of trading and a lot of content. I would write about those tapes in Vital. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Korm Plastics, your label.
Yeah. And I had a few people I was always trading with. Harsh Reality Music in the USA, Chris Finney. I traded a lot of tapes with him. Watergate Tapes, also an American label. And of course, you would get the stuff in, and I like this tape. I should write about it. Yeah. The fanzine, I'm pretty sure, never made much money, if at all. The cassette did, actually, because I sold tapes also. I wasn't just trading, because I would send out tapes to, people like John C. Wiz from Sleep Chamber. He had a fanzine. He would write about my stuff, so people would read it and order a cassette. Akifumi Nakajima, who later became Aub, he passed away 10 years ago. So he was one of my biggest Japanese customers, buying everything. So yeah, that made some money. It effectively kept me out of getting a job until I worked for Staalplaat.
So could we just talk a little bit about the way you made the fanzine? Like what What was the method you had it printed and so on?
The first 3 issues I typed on my dad's typewriter, which was basically also, the way you did the layout. And fairly early on, my dad also had a computer and a matrix printer, of course. And then I printed out, I think the next 2 issues, I wrote it on the computer, and I would print it out and then I would cut it and do the design on paper. And I was terribly bad at it. Everything is not very aligned. I finished university as a trade historian, and university also had a small room available for students who made their own student magazines. And you could learn how to use PageMaker. And you could use that facility, and they had a laser printer. I would go to this place with my floppy disk and print out large sheets of paper, long stripes, go back home, and then cut and paste these into Vital. And so they were all A4 size. Went to the copy shop to reduce them to A5 and stuck them together, and then that will be the master issue.
I think that kind of handmade cut and paste approach was very much a common method to use back then to do layouts and so on.
Yeah, it gives a character or something. Yeah.
Yes. That's why I want to do these as books also, because this stuff looks way more exciting than any blog where you can I'll pick a template. It's not to be compared with doing a fanzine, not in a million years.
This idea of lost history is something that kind of is paining me now, because I'm realizing all this kind of pre-digital, pre-internet stuff, most of it's not really collected or archived properly, so it's hard to find.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I'm currently doing is in 1992 I started working for Staalplaat as a job, and I did it for 11 years, and I got out and I run my own record label for a while, mostly CDs, a bit of vinyl, and almost at the same time I finished my book about Staalplaat, which was published in 2016, and then I thought, oh, it's a very interesting thing to do books. And because somebody asked me to do a book way earlier than this, with all of the combined issues of Vital, I thought, I have these scans, why not get a book myself? Because I now know where to print it and what it will cost me and stuff like that.
We'll have one in our hands soon.
Yes, it's in the mail. I've delivered it yesterday.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
There's of course more fanzines out there that are interesting to reprint. So, and then I did Neue Musik from David Elliott last year, which is the fanzine that he did in the very late 70s, early 80s. A lot of synth music, a lot of prog rock. And the next one will hopefully be Onslaught, the American magazine from Mark Lane, that came every issue with the first 2 with a flexi disc and the last 4 with a cassette.
You had an early experience of using computers for publishing. Could you talk about what point you decided to move Vital online and make it a online distribution?
Yeah, because I was working with Staalplaat, and I think in 1993 I was in America for the first time in my life. We came to a guy's house and said, I'm going to check my email. I had no idea what he was talking about. And maybe 2 years later, in 1995, World Wide Web became a word that people from Staalplaat were talking about. And so my boss, I think, or somebody came with a small black box that made a whole lot of noise. And I remember the famous word, he said, "I think we're in." And I had no idea what he was talking about. But of course, then we had email, and in those days, everybody used a CC field. And I was copying all of these email addresses like crazy. I realized if I collect all of this email from people, I can send them a mass mailing and write reviews. I'm thinking this is a way to do Vital in a different way and send out an email to 5,000 people, of course, who were all annoyed by the fact that some idiot from the Netherlands sent them an email with some reviews of stuff they didn't know. So then I did away with the fanzine and it came online. Yeah.
What would you say was the impact on your career or your life journey from, that first decision to print the directory and then going into Vital?
I've met people that I'm still in contact with. And this is something I recently was thinking about. Some people that I also started around 84, 85, I'm still in contact with. Jos Swolles, still somebody I'm in contact with. Peter Zinke, who is a Duits music called Odal, I'm still in contact with. Jacques van Bussel had a label called Midas Tapes, or Little Midas Music. I'm still in contact with him. He has a record store. All of these people stayed within doing music or running labels. And that changed. And of course, other people drop off. And oddly enough, sometimes people return. And are surprised that I'm actually still doing the same thing I've always been doing.
So it sounds like it sort of set you off on your path.
I gave up a few things in life that I'm pretty sure were in reach of me if I would have had a real job. If I had a real job, I could have bought a house now. So I've realized if I do this, I will never make a lot of money. But on the other hand, I bought a lot of freedom. I can do whatever I want to do all day.
Yeah, and it's strangely something that you can't buy if you did want to buy that kind of freedom in life.
You can't physically buy it, but it's decisions you can make to do this. Yeah, and of course, like I said, I'm going towards retirement. So in about 7 or 8 years, the Dutch state will provide my pension, and I can do this all day without caring if it sells or not.
Starting from when we worked on the reissue of the Premonitions tape in 2024, the music of the Omega Ensemble has fascinated Tom Gibbs. After being met with sad news when he visited the contact address printed on the band's cassette card, he needed something else to move his search for the band further. Amazingly, the package of 80s cassette material sent to us by Steve contained a flyer from the band, which listed the names of all the players. You'll have heard us discover this in the last episode. We then photographed that flyer and emailed it to Tom so he could continue his search.
So that essentially gave me a couple of names with which to search on the internet. So Kevin Harper was one, and Paul Ramsey was the other. And fortunately, both were a little easier to find than my only lead before. Both Kevin and Paul have pretty active profiles online as artists. So I got in touch with them both at the same time, and they both responded within the day. So I even let them know that, I'd gone down to Southampton on my only lead that I had to the band, and, explained the outcome of that. And I think, they were amazed at seeing the extent to which I was going to hunt down. So I got in contact with them both. I arranged a call. I spoke with both Paul and Kevin for, half hour, 40 minutes, got much more than I could have hoped for. So I happened to be going down to Cornwall like a week or two after, and working out that Paul was down in Exeter, decided to go visit him on my way back from that trip. So that was when I stopped by. It was amazing. Thankfully, Paul was one of those people that hadn't chucked out any of things over the years. So he had a pretty healthy collection of things to go through. Kevin was the more technical guy when it came to the recording of the Ensemble's music. So he's the one that I've been sort of more engaged on with the actual search for the original masters for Still Lim Tao.
That's intriguing. So does he have the master tape?
We've found some reels as of the last few weeks or so, and the next step is seeing as to whether they're playable or not and have survived the many intervening years.
And when you say you found them, where did you find them?
I'm assuming nestled deep somewhere in his...
Right. In a massive dusty pile of stuff. So how do you feel about actually, going on this journey and actually finally tracking down the very remaining members of the band?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty amazing process, from going down to Southampton and, discovering what was pretty sort of like sad potential conclusion to things with no other leads and no other alleys to go down. So, having got in contact and them really, inspired by the whole process and really happy that there's a potential that the recording is going to be given a new lease of life, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's a great story to actually get to the point where potentially this gets a release in life, doesn't it? Just from these reaching out. So that's very good.
Yeah, it's an amazing recording. I mean, it would be a great legacy for, hopefully, them, essentially.
In this episode, you heard the voices of Frans de Waard and Tom Gibbs. The music you heard is The Haters, performance 12/01/1989. Black Humour, Weeds in Barren Soil from the Cassette Poetry. John Hudak, The Talk from Brainbox. Arcane Device, live at the Clock Tower, 27/4/1989. Composition number 121 by Jos Smulders from Abstract Art. Big City Orchestra, The Smart Thing from Every Man is a Volume. All music released on cassette by Korm Plastics. And Piece 2 by the Omega Ensemble from their cassette Sil Lim Tao.